Hello everybody! I was not gonna do a video on Elden Ring. Hell, I wasn't even gonna play it, but it happened. Much like probably a lot of you, it's been consuming my life for the past couple weeks, but because it's not really necessarily a genre or the type of game I would really cover on my channel, I didn't get any footage for it. I didn't even think to. Luckily, my buddy Dreamcast Guy helped me out, and now I got some footage that you guys can look at while I talk. Now, I have a few choice words to say about my experience with the game, but before we get into that, I do want to take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, Opera GX. Today's video is sponsored by Opera GX, the first web browser designed specifically for gamers. Full disclosure, this browser caught my eye a while back and looked super interesting, so when they approached me to do this, it was honestly a no-brainer. Opera GX is super easy to set up and is packed with a ton of convenient features like Discord integration, Twitter integration, and various other messaging services. And it even has Twitch integration so you can see who's live without ever navigating to the site. The homepage has a neat little section called GX Corner where you'll get some updates about upcoming game releases, gaming news, and free games. Opera GX also not only has its own extension store, but Google Chrome extensions are even compatible with Opera. My personal favorite thing about Opera GX and what had initially got my attention was the GX Control feature, which allows you to manually control how much RAM or CPU the browser uses, so it never gets in the way if you're gaming or doing other demanding tasks. And speaking of customizable options, you can also customize the look of the browser with different themes, colors, and wallpapers. It also has animated wallpapers which run smoothly in the background of your browser. And no need to worry about everything you have saved in your current browser, because Opera GX has an easy-to-use importing tool, and with a click of a button, all your bookmarks, cookies, and settings are all imported as fast as you can blink. Opera GX is also available on mobile and works seamlessly between desktop and mobile due to the Flow feature, which lets you send files, links, and notes between devices in a single click. I honestly think this browser is awesome, so if you'd like to check it out and also help my channel in the process, click the link in the description to download Opera GX completely free. It's like actually really good, so go check it out. Now, I've never really played a Souls game before. I did play a few hours of Dark Souls 3 when that first came out, but I didn't get very far before I put it down and forgot to pick it back up. I've been meaning to play Bloodborne. I've owned that game for years, but I just never got around to picking it up. Same goes for Sekiro. I've always been curious about the series, and I do like difficult games, but I never knew whether they'd really be up my alley or not, but I did always want to check them out. I don't know if you guys have heard me talk about this much, but I'm really not an open world kind of guy. I like linear games. I was not a big fan of Breath of the Wild. I think I've mentioned that before. This may sound crazy, but I don't necessarily like choice in games, so to speak. I kind of like when there's one path I'm supposed to take. And sure, it's nice if there's some other stuff to do along the way, but I like when the game intends me to go from point A to point B. There's obviously some exceptions to this, but for the most part, I like when there is a challenge I'm supposed to overcome, and that's what I'm supposed to do. That's the point. Now, it may not make sense why I'd not only play Elden Ring, but play Elden Ring as my first Souls game, but everyone else was playing it, and I've kind of been interested in it for a while because, like, Game of Thrones was cool. So, Dark Souls, George R.R. Martin, I was interested, and everybody was playing it, so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna play it. I gave it a shot, and I gotta say, everything else aside, I actually think that this, I didn't like Breath of the Wild. I thought, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but I thought that most of that world that I saw at least was very samey. It was like a bunch of mountains and hills and grass, and I was bored. I was very bored with most of what I was doing in that game. In Elden Ring, everything is very different, and I'm always finding new things, and it always seems substantial. When I played Breath of the Wild, I didn't feel like most of my quote-unquote discoveries really mattered much. It just seemed like overall it did a better job of keeping my attention with more things to see and enemy types and things of that nature. But obviously Breath of the Wild came out years ago now. That's no fault of its own, and this video is not about Breath of the Wild, but I can't help but draw parallels. Now, there's a lot about this game that I liked. I mean, I played it for me, what is a very long time. I spent 65 hours on it. That's a long time for me. When I'm used to playing games that are like 10 hours long, this is a lot for me. Despite not liking the overall scope of the map because it's enormous and it's too much for me, I did think the world was very interesting, and it was exciting when I got to a new area and was like, oh my god, look at all this. That's cool, and that makes me kind of get the allure of an open world game, not having any strict boundaries put on you necessarily, and you can just go out and find things and feel like you're discovering something. There was plenty to like about this game, but that's pretty much where it ended for me. I liked it. I didn't love it. And that's fine. I don't need to have every game that I play be the most amazing thing I ever played in my life. That's not necessary. But for a game that is as gigantic and as long as this game is, I feel like I should like the game more than I did to invest all the time that I did into it. Like, if I walk away from a game that's only a few hours long thinking like, oh, that was pretty good, that's fine. But when a game is dozens of hours long, like, I fucking hope I love it. Now, nobody forced me to play the game. I kept playing it because I wanted to, but I was in this weird place of wanting to keep playing it, but not really wanting to keep playing it as much as I probably should have. I know this probably all sounds nuts, but like, it's like being addicted to something that's not necessarily good for you. Games like this tend to get addicting even when you don't necessarily like them that much. Like, yeah, I'm not having the time of my life, but oh, I gotta get past this part. I just gotta get to the next part. Just a little bit more. I just gotta beat this one thing. That's what this feels like. So I kept playing it and playing it for hours and hours and hours at a time just because I felt like I needed to. And I liked it, but I didn't like it that much. I feel like I played most of this game out of compulsion as opposed to enjoyment. And with most other games, that's probably not as big of a deal. But when a game is as big as this one is, it becomes a situation where you start neglecting other responsibilities and video topics because you're doing something else. And this is no fault of the game. I understand that open world games are not for me, but here's where my main issue stems from. Inherently, Dark Souls is the kind of game where you have this seemingly insurmountable challenge that at first feels totally impossible to overcome, but the more you learn and the more you practice, the more possible everything becomes. It's still hard as hell, but it's doable. It's the kind of game that gets you to keep playing and keep playing. It's the kind of game that gets you to go, just one more try, just one more try, just one more try. Just give me one, oh, let me try one more time. That's what Dark Souls is. And now on the same token, open world games are the kind of games where let me just explore a little bit more. Let me just explore a little bit more. Oh, look at that. All right, let me keep going a little bit. Together, that creates a monster. This can either be a recipe for the best game you ever played in your entire life, or it could be completely detrimental to your life that is not the video game. Now, full disclosure, found out the hard way, I'm not very good at the Souls games. But I still needed to keep playing. I still needed to beat the next thing. This combination of design philosophies created a great game, but it also created something that needs way, way too much of me. It created something that I needed to pour all of my energy into, all of my free time. Now, I could have played this for a couple hours every week over the course of years, but who does that? I realized quickly that the only way to escape this game's clutches was for me to put everything I had into it and beat the game as fast as I could. I didn't want to commit that much energy into it, but I really did want to make sure everything that was standing between me and becoming Elden Lord became dead. And I did it. It took me 65 hours, which is about 20 hours longer than the quoted how long to beat time is, and probably 20 of those hours were spent grinding levels, but I did it. At first, I came out of this thinking, I'm never playing another Souls game again. I'm not good at this. But it wasn't long until I started getting a craving to play the other ones, especially Bloodborne. And then I was like, all right, then I guess I'm not going to play an open world game again, because that must be the problem. But no. When Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, I'm gonna play that. I said I didn't like Breath of the Wild 1, but like, I didn't like Breath of the Wild 1 as a Zelda game, but it's still a Zelda game, so I had to play it. So I'm not gonna not play a mainline Zelda game. I'm gonna play Breath of the Wild 2 when it comes out, and I'll probably enjoy it as much as the first one, which was very mild. When I say I didn't like Breath of the Wild 1, it's not saying I didn't get any enjoyment at all out of it. I just got less than I would have if it was a more linear Zelda game. I can get some enjoyment out of an open world game, so I wouldn't say that I'm never going to play an open world game anymore either. So what's the problem? I think the problem comes in when you combine the two. When you combine such an addictive, extremely difficult type of game with a game that is gigantic. A game that's combat and playstyle constantly tries to get you to keep playing while also being extremely difficult to overcome, combined with a world map that constantly tries to get you to keep playing while also being staggeringly huge. And honestly, to me, that's a double-edged sword. For some people, it may create the best game you've ever played in your entire life. But I'm sure I'm not alone in saying, for some other people, it may create something that is detrimental to your life. This may seem dramatic, but I don't know about you, but for me, I got ADHD, and this is bad for me. What this all really boils down to is I'll probably maybe someday play Bloodborne and Demon Souls and Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro or anything else that FromSoft makes, but I probably won't play an Elden Ring 2. Probably. Don't quote me on that, because who knows, but I will intend to not play an Elden Ring 2. The game is great. It really is. It is quite the accomplishment. The game is a piece of art. It is very good, but it is not good for me. Hope you enjoyed this little unplanned video. I'll see you next time with something that is not Elden Ring. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it and want to see more, there's a couple other videos right there you can check out. And if you want to see everything I upload, subscribe and then tap the bell icon. And if you want to help support the channel, I also have a Patreon right there too.